Hey guys, welcome back to my next art book preview. This week we have the new Pose Catalogue, and this is number 2 in this series, which, I don't speak Japanese, but basically this is the male figure. So there is a female figure version of this as well. So this is a soft cover, as you can see, but it does still have almost like a dust jacket on it. So it's pretty plain underneath, but this seems to be like a pretty common thing in some of these Japanese books. So let's get straight into this. The lighting should be okay because these pages are not particularly glossy, even though the cover is. Again, I cannot read any of this. I did actually look on my phone with Google Translate, and it did do a pretty good job. It basically indicates this section here is the colour section. This bottom section is the monochrome, or like a value studies, aka black and white. And it tells you what their uses are in terms of what medium they recommend for using colours and stuff like that. A bit irrelevant. And here is just a breakdown of all the poses. Now, you might have to full screen this because these are quite small, and some of the images throughout this book are quite small, which is probably one of the biggest downsides. So this is a really good example of what you are going to see throughout the book. Basically, you're going to see one pose here, and then you're going to see it from different angles. So looking up at this, with it being on a turntable or the camera moving around it, same difference. Same level, and looking from above the character. So that is really, in a nutshell, what this book is. It's going to show a different pose for each page. I am going to keep previewing through it just to show you most of these pages. Because if, like me, you've been looking at pose books for a while, but you're not really sure what they like inside, then maybe this video will help you out. I have actually just very quickly doodled something in my sketchbook from one of these pages, so I will show you that towards the end of the video. It's not very impressive, but just to show you how I used it. So there are a few books in this series from what I understand. Book 1 is the female one, which, hold on, I've got here. So this one is book 1, basically the same book, but the female equivalent. You might have noticed that I was covering the nipples on that one, so it is similar to this, but there is more nudity in the sense of, I can't show that one on YouTube because female breasts, nipples, YouTube does not approve. Which is a real shame because I would have liked to have previewed that one on camera as well. But honestly, once you've seen this one, you'll kind of get the idea because it really is a similar kind of thing. Well, almost identical, just a different model. I actually draw more pinups, female pinups, than I do male. But for some reason, I think the male one actually is pretty good. Closer to like the Loomis proportions and stuff, whereas, the reality is that female figures are often shorter than we depict them in art, which I know can be a bit of an argument, but what I mean is this one is probably actually closer in proportions to things that you will be drawing. But honestly, if you're drawing from either of these books, there is value, and that's really what I wanted to talk about, and that's what I've sort of been wondering. As mentioned earlier, I've come across these books for years and years online on Japanese Amazon and stuff like that. But I've never dared really buy them because of the shipping cost without knowing whether they're good enough quality and whether they're actually good enough to use for art reference. So my intention for these was basically to understand anatomy and perspective. I do have better books on anatomy, so maybe that's a bit of an exaggeration, but seeing the model from different angles I always think is something that's really helpful. There's so much reference nowadays online that I reckon it's going to be better online because the quality is much sharper. But for me, I like to have some physical reference from books, which is pretty difficult to come by nowadays. But the reason for that is that I don't like getting too much screen time, especially late at night. Sometimes I just need a break from my screen, so I do find it handy to have a book. Again, I think that the quality of images you get online is usually better, and some of the pose books are sometimes available as PDFs as well. So again, that might be better quality. But for those of you like me, you want to reduce your screen time a little bit, or maybe have some physical copies because I like owning books, then these ones in particular are actually really cheap to buy anyway. So I will put links to where I got mine from in the description box below. I think 1 and 2 are the male and female, and then the next few are couples, so a male and female together in different poses. There is actually a preview someone has already made on YouTube, if you can find that one. And I'm not sure that there is many more than that. I think there's only 4 or 5. But I'll keep an eye out. If you guys are interested in seeing those ones, I will potentially get hold of them and maybe preview them on camera. So one other thing to note quickly is I mentioned at the beginning monochrome and colour. you've basically just seen most of the colour section. The monochrome section, I was a little bit confused by at first because it is quite literally exactly the same as what you've just seen. The same pages from 1 to 100-ish, let's say, but in black and white. Now, from translating it, the idea of it is to use as like a value study and to study the shadows and stuff. It's a pretty good idea, but I'm not sure it's really necessary. I'm not sure it's valuable enough at this size and quality print. The colours and the monochrome ones are good enough to use as perspective reference, which again I'll show you in a second, putting figures in 3D space. But I don't really think it's necessary personally that they redid the entire book in black and white. They could have probably just done the colour version and then just half the book and made it even cheaper. But again, that's just my opinion. Other people may disagree. I haven't used them as value studies, so maybe I'll change my mind when I do. So I'm not going to flip through every single page here because you've already seen them on the colour versions. But yeah, I ordered this and quite a few other pose books, like Visual Nude book, I think it's called, and Super Pose book. Put in a big order. I was always curious about them. Unfortunately, I'm not sure I'll be able to show those on camera. But yeah, it's pretty much that throughout now. So if I go back to this first page, I'll show you my very, very quick attempt. So going by this page here, I wanted to just quickly use this to see whether the book had any value, just to draw the figure from different angles. Excuse my extremely messy sketchbook. Some of these are just awful. Some of them worked out a little bit better. This row did not. Yeah, that was a really quick attempt. But despite them sucking, it did sort of teach me some things and it helped me sort of think in 3D space. So even though I only had one quick go there, I can actually see the value in these if you're looking to learn how to draw figures in perspective. So I'm going to leave it at that. Hope you found this video useful. Make sure you subscribe if you want to see more content. Thanks for watching, everyone.